on the waste sector, where in this session, in the next hour and a half, we'll be taking a look at some of the data requirements that are needed for the preparation of Suriname's biennial transparency report, and more specifically in your national inventory report. And so this will be an exercise similar to what was done for your third national communication. However, in this session, we'll be looking mainly at the data requirements. And, and as we go along, if you have any questions, please stop me along the way, or feel free to enter the chat as we go along. So this is an overview of what we've been looking at in the past few weeks. So today we're doing the waste sector data requirements. So at the start of last month, mid last month, we did an overview of the whole greenhouse gas inventory process. We went into energy, transport, industrial processes, and product use. And we did the AFLU sector 2 weeks ago. And so now we're completing our series with the waste sector. So we'll go right into it. So when we're talking about the IPCC guidelines, these are the guidelines that say that are provided to parties to the UNFCCC and Paris Agreement for how they're supposed to methodologically put their greenhouse gas inventories together. It also gives the different subsectors, the different data requirements, etc. So when we look at the waste sector in terms of what goes into a national inventory, these are the main categories. So there's solid waste disposal, which you have mainly methane emissions, CH4. You have the biological treatment of solid waste, which give you CH4 and N2O and nitrous oxide. You have incineration and open burning of waste, and you have wastewater, right? And then within these, you also have the industrial solid waste and industrial solid waste and industrial wastewater as well. And so from these main categories, the main types of data will be waste generation data, the composition of the waste, and then the management data. And so we'll take a look at these in a little while. And broadly, when we're looking at the waste sector, the main gases that are emitted include CO2, so carbon dioxide, methane, and N2O emissions. And so these are coming mainly from solid waste disposal, biological treatment of solid waste incineration, and open burning of solid waste. That's where you get a lot of the CO2 emissions, and then wastewater treatment and discharge. So both domestic and industrial. And so typically, CH4 emissions or methane emissions from solid waste disposal sites are the largest source in the waste sector, typically because as the population grows, the amount of waste per capita increases, and so this produces an annual increase of emissions of CH4 emissions. And also some notes here that biogenic CO2 emissions are not included in the waste sector. And what this means is emissions that are coming from facilities where you might have capture of gases, of CO2 gases. These would not be included in the waste sector. So only those that are coming from the typical waste activities. And another note is that all GHG emissions from waste to energy should be estimated and reported under the energy sector. So these are just a couple side notes in the waste sector when you're as the compiler of the waste sector. inventory. If you have any waste to energy facilities or projects, if you have an energy use, an energy captured from perhaps from a landfill, you have a waste to energy facility that would go under energy. So I think I mentioned already that usually the largest source of emissions normally come from solid waste disposal sites. And yeah, this I think is also the case in Suriname's inventory, in your waste sector inventory, that the largest emissions from the waste sector come from solid waste disposal. And this is also just showing some of the other areas where you may have overlap between the waste sector and other sectors. So we mentioned a couple already. So wherever you have landfills, where you have wastewater or landfills that are burned for energy, those go in the energy sector. And where it could also overlap with the agriculture sector is that wherever you have anaerobic digestion, which is also a type of waste management system. However, when used in the agriculture sector and composting of manure, for example, that those emissions will fall under the agriculture sector. And I know that we also mentioned open burning of waste. However, where you when you have manure that's burned without energy recovery, it's reported under the waste sector. So so that's a case where it would fall under the waste sector. And then there are some other notes here regarding sludge, right? So where you have sludge that's removed from wastewater treatment facilities, if this sludge is applied to soils and sent to landfills, composted, digested, or incinerated, this these also should be included in the waste sector. However, if they have compost and sludge that are applied to soils, like cropland and grassland, they should be reported under agriculture. So, because you have other soil components that are soil emissions, that are reported under the agriculture sector. If you're adding things to the soil, typically they will be accounted for under the agriculture sector. Okay, is everything okay so far? Runs with me? Okay.
I had a question. I see this in this we can view the previous slide in this presentation, right? On our own. In one
Mhm.
of the meetings we could go back if we wanted to while you were just but I see that option is not available in this meeting. I wanted
Mm,
to have a look at the agriculture, the previous slide. Not this one, the next one, I think. Yes. Yes, I wanted to view it. You were a little fast for me.
okay.
I was still reading, so I was looking for the option to go back, but I see the option is not available in this one, this call.
I think I know um, how to fix that. So if you give me a second, I can share.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So I could, there's something I can do. That's right. There we go. Okay. I just had to change the setting. Okay. Thanks. I didn't realize that you use that function, but that's good to know for other workshops.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so carry on then. So just to give you a visual idea of the different solid waste pathways, you have here the solid waste that's coming from the consumer, from the population, uh, where it then goes to waste collection, and then probably you have uh, different types of waste collection, maybe in the different parts of the country. Number one here has waste prevention and minimization. So this is before you collect your waste. If you have any areas here that um, you know that regard waste minimization, this could be things like recycling. This could be other matters. This could be uh, you know mainly measures like recycling and separating of waste before heading to the landfill. And so then too, after the waste is collected, whether in a specific municipality, some of the waste may be diverted for recycling, waste diversion through recycling and reuse. And so, and however, the IPCC guidelines don't account for waste that's diverted from a waste stream for reuse to the extent uh, for example, regarding the energy sector. But so the second level is where you have the diversion for recycling, and then the third point here is that waste continues that we as waste that continues may go to the landfill, or it may go for composting. See if I have my arrow. Oops. Going to the landfill, or it goes to composting. So I'm not sure if you have uh, like composting facilities, or maybe you have composting facility in the same area that you have landfilling facilities. But ideally or usually, this is where you have this divergence. And then there are the other part of the waste streams that you might have some waste that may be incinerated. So this can be at an actual facility or a less structured facility like open air dumps, where it's open burned. So this is just an example here of incineration, but this could also be a less formal process that's called open burning, which is also classified as uh, an area under the IPCC guidelines. So which is where emissions go directly into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide through burning, or it goes through a stack, through a controlled stack in a incinerator facility. And then the rest of the waste stream, some waste may be treated biologically through anaerobic digestion. So this depends on the type of waste. This can be for solid waste um, and wastewater and liquid waste. But there are some countries who also have anaerobic digestion as a pathway for their solid waste. So this is where at these different streams, you'd need to, as a country, identify what percentage of my solid waste is going to a landfill, what percentage is being composted, if it is, what percentage is being incinerated or open burned, and if there's a percentage that undergoes anaerobic digestion. And then some of the other mechanisms here, this MBT, this is mechanical biological treatment. So I'm not sure if this is happening in country, but this is where you have a series of steps to reduce the volume and stabilize waste, right? So waste typically goes into fractions. It's broken down into fractions for further composting, anaerobic digestion, or combustion or recycling. So this is additional step here. And what is left may go to a landfill here, a residual landfill. So this says it's like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 process, but really it could be that it stops here at the landfill, or it stops here at the landfill, or most things in certain municipalities go directly to open burning, for example, maybe in some rural areas. And depending on how advanced the waste treatment and facilities are in the country, they can go as far as 6 and 7. But those are all the possible pathways. And then just to give a brief overview of the common wastewater pathways, because during this session, we'll be looking mainly at the data requirements. So this is just giving you an idea of the pathways, and an overview of the methodologies. You have, of course, domestic wastewater and industrial wastewater. So domestic wastewater here, which is number 1, is where water is collected in a sewer, and this could be an open or closed sewer, and where it's moved to a centralized treatment facility. And this can sometimes be directly dumped into water bodies after it's treated. So here, domestic wastewater, it could be, it's a little small here, the screen. But you can have it here going into an open sewer in your municipal wastewater treatment facility, and it could be discharged to water or discharged to land. And then you might also have a portion that's untreated, right? You might have some untreated that go directly to a body of water, or it's collected and then at some point and then it's discharged. And then for industrial wastewater, so this is in some countries, these two treatment systems are usually separated. In some cases, they are together, depending on the type of industry. So in some cases, industrial can be combined with domestic, and in other cases, it's treated on site at an industrial facility. So in some cases, especially where you have high nutrient load, the wastewater is treated on site, perhaps with the adding of aerobic and anaerobic treatment, perhaps in a pond within the facility or within a tank in the facility, whereby you have the production of sludges, depending on the type of industry. And you might have some of that sludge discharged to land, and some portion that's then taken into an anaerobic digestion, for example. In some cases, you might also have treatment where it's treated in the facility and then goes to discharge into open body of water as well. The option isn't necessarily here, but that's a common pathway as well. Once it's treated, it can then be discharged into a natural body of water. Okay. So now I wanted to, this is where maybe I'd like your feedback, colleagues, from hearing this introduction and hearing about the different solid waste pathways and wastewater pathways. Now, when we're looking at the context of Suriname's inventory, would like to get your feedback on any of these areas that you might that are available in country. So, for example, in your last greenhouse gas inventory, which was a part of your third national communication. You had your waste sector included solid waste disposal. You had biological. Oh, okay. So this one, biological treatment of solid waste, was not included, but you had incineration and open burning of waste. You had wastewater treatment and discharge. So you had these main three: solid waste, incineration, open burning, and wastewater treatment. And so I also put some notes here that were in your last inventory, because this will be important uh, for when you're putting together your greenhouse gas inventory for your BTR, right? So for 4A, for solid waste disposal, there were two types of solid waste disposal identified. So unmanaged deep and unmanaged shallow. And this is the level at which your landfills are. So it means that the deeper you are, usually the more emissions you have that are trapped under the mass of, or the majority of the landfill. And unmanaged shallow, the shallower the landfill, usually the more emissions are able to vent off at a quicker time. But that's good. So you identified what are some of the two of the main treatment types in your landfills. You identified what are your main disposal sites. Or Namibo, you had uncontrolled combustion. So this is what was classified as unmanaged deep. And then you have your municipal solid waste site from Paramaribo and these other municipalities, if I'm correct in saying that. And then you had other smaller unmanaged areas, shallow disposal sites in these other areas. So when looking at your inventory, it would be good to maybe take stock to see if this is still the case, and also take stock to see if there's uh, any other of these categories that would be missing or need to be included.
I don't think we have wastewater treatment. It's not being collected, I think. But there are companies who have wastewater, but I don't think we are able to get that data.
Okay. So wastewater, as a note, that might be tricky. So in a few, we'll take a look at what's the data that we need for wastewater.
Brittany,
Yes, Angela.
we do have wastewater treatment from Newmont and from I Am Gold, the two big gold companies. But I'm sure there are much more companies that we need to collect data. But for those two big gold companies, we have the data. Stephanie wants to say
Okay.
something, probably from BOK.
See, Stephanie is in the chat. It says only a few companies treat their wastewater, and so therefore there's limited wastewater treatment. Other than that, it's limited to septic tanks and grease traps. And this is for industries, right? For companies, not septic tanks. So some industries use septic tanks for their treatment of their wastewater. Is that did I get that right, Stephanie? Okay. Yeah, okay. So I suppose similar to your last inventory, that wastewater would be a challenge. Industrial wastewater, at least, would be a challenge. I don't think it was included here anyway. Um, I think the wastewater here 4D that was included was mainly for from domestic wastewater. Yes, German?
So this one is little tricky for me. That's why I'm asking you. Maybe you can help us out. For Newmont, I had some site visits. I think Stephanie was there as well. I'm not sure. Can't remember. But they have like a big reservoir where they put their wastewater. They call it TFS or something. Tail something storage. So when they produce wastewater, they put it there to for it to sink. I think it's a whole process, and if when it's treated long enough, they can discharge it if it's overflown or something. But the point is, they discharge it regularly. So when they feel the need for it, but I'm just thinking, would that be considered wastewater as well? Because it may have different chemicals or pollutants, but I'm not sure what the composition is. It's a tailings facility, something like that they call it. So would we consider this as wastewater as well?
From what it sounds like, it definitely sounds like wastewater. But what I'm not clear is if that is from like your water company, your sewage company, or if you're referring to, or are you referring to an industry?
Oh yeah, I didn't mention that. It's from Newmont, one of the gold mining companies, the big one.
Okay. Yeah, so then that would definitely be a source of industrial wastewater. So maybe I don't know what they're treating, or I don't know what they're treating or using water for. Uh,
I think
exactly.
Brittany, they use cyanide for their
Mm-hmm.
gold mining. So
Okay.
probably it has to do with the chemicals they use to extract the gold.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely that would be considered wastewater. It would be good to get an understanding of what their facility is using to treat the wastewater, if they have testing, for example, or just to get an understanding of the flow of the treatment, because maybe sometimes facilities are using like they have a treatment pond, which is or a pond that is to cool water before it goes into back into the environment. But in this case, maybe it's for uh, like you mentioned, for additional of chemicals, but we just want to understand what treatment system they're using in those ponds before it's going back into the natural environment. But definitely that would be one of them. And ideally, what you should ask them is, what is the treatment system that they're using, and then what is the volume the volume of wastewater that they're discharging.
Yes, so that's why it's complicated for me. I have some follow-up questions on that because the thing is they actually told us everything, but I don't remember everything. But they laid it out for us, so we didn't have questions. But it's an open reservoir, right? So it gets rainwater inside, and also they discharge their wastewater inside. So when you calculate the volume, do you use the volume that's in the pit, in the open reservoir, or you use only what they discharge? Because eventually, if it's full, to prevent overflowing, they will discharge it. But when they discharge it, they also have some points where they like take measurements of the composition and all those things. So I'm just thinking, what can we use as the volume? Do we use their discharge volume, or the discharge what they discharge into the environment, or what it's in the pond? So it's a
Yeah,
little tricky for me.
yeah. Very good question. Yeah, very good question. I might have to check on that, but ideally, the what the measurement usually is for industrial wastewater is the volume of wastewater that's discharged into the natural environment, and it usually is after treatment. Um, So especially like if they're getting rainwater, then it shouldn't really affect it shouldn't really affect the quality of, for example, of the wastewater. If anything, it should improve it. But usually it's what is discharged into the natural environment. Another way to know how much wastewater is being produced, if they don't, for example, if they don't capture how much is being discharged uh, into the natural environment, is to know how much their facilities are producing. So how much water that they're using. So that's if you can get both, that would be ideal. But I think if you're getting it from the beginning, how much they're actually producing, using and producing in their operations, that would be the first step. And then if you can't get that, then you can backtrack. Yeah, okay, thumbs up. I see something here in the chat.
Brittany,
Sustainable.
one question. This is
Sure.
just purely only for water. We're not nothing with waste oil, right? This is just water
Uh,
because they also have waste oil. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, so this doesn't include waste oil. So
Okay,
ideally, waste oil shouldn't be going into the natural environment. It should be captured. So I think someone mentioned something here, grease traps. Those grease traps should be, they're trapped and then they're taken into barrels or removed, right?
okay,
I don't think those go into the natural environment. So no, that's not usually accounted for because it's
okay.
not.
Thanks.
Good question. And thank you also for sharing this data in the chat. I see you have here tons of recycled waste.
So there is
Wow.
data, but just like German said, we need more explanation of what they did to calculate this data. But this is
Okay.
what they have. But
This is
yeah,
this is
more
from the
from
gold company,
the
gold
gold
mine.
company from Newmont.
Okay. Water reclaimed, water reused. Yeah. So they're telling you how much water they're, I don't know if reclaimed means the water that they're taking from like the river or so, maybe. I think that's probably what that means. And then they reuse a certain amount. So that's, yeah, I'm not so clear on what exactly this means, but this is a good start, but at least it's where you can ask questions, ask them questions if this is the water that is used.
And the second one is from the other big company, Rosabel. So both big biggest gold companies have this, but we need explanation.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so I can see that they have data here on solid waste that has been landfilled. That's good. That will be good for your solid waste because what we'll need to find out is the percentage, right? Um, and you can get as specific as you like, because you'll have solid waste that's coming from your domestic solid waste. You'll have solid waste in this case coming from this industry that's going to the same landfill, or unless it's a different landfill. They have recycled steel. Yeah, I'm not sure if they're recycling and using the steel or if this steel is, so there's some, those are to be some of the questions that I have. I'm not sure what recycled waste means either. But ideally, you'd like to know what is the end of the waste cycle for each of these things. So we know waste oil, we don't have to worry. It's good that they collect this information as long as the waste, or maybe you verify this waste oil is collected where, in barrels and so forth, what's done with it. Recycled steel, maybe this is a steel that they're, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this is considered a waste product or not, but definitely at least the first one. So what solid waste has been landfilled? But it's a good place for questions, or if they have notes to the report that this that you have this information from, Anjali, would be good to know. But that's good. I think we're moving along well. Um, some questions and maybe some questions for the industries, at least is where a lot of the questions so far have been coming from. But let's not forget also we have from the domestic uh, here the domestic solid waste, right? And biological treatment of solid waste. For B here, this wasn't included, but I usually this is a big one, right? Um, so if you don't have uh, this doesn't exist in the country. Uh, but 4D for wastewater treatment and discharge, uh, this data would usually come from the main water company, sewage company, whoever is managing wastewater, and then also from your industries. Okay. Yes, Angelique.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is collecting. I mean, the companies are not collecting data on the sewage water. I think maybe Bureau of Public Health, they do have some data about the quality of water when they do certain checks. Stephanie can correct me, but overall, we don't know the amount of sewage water that's going in our oceans. I don't think, but you guys can correct me. Lalita, you can also correct me. But I think that would be hard to find that data.
We don't have a centralized system, no. Not as the developed country. Our system is just everything goes in a open canal or some open river or something. But it's so that's the I mean the household wastewater, right? So toilet water from the
Yeah, sewage.
yeah sewage. So
It just
those
goes in the goes in the open creeks and then
yeah
goes wherever. It's not really treated.
no,
Okay.
we don't have the
Okay.
centralized system for that.
Okay. Um, sorry, go
Sorry, if I
ahead,
may
Lalita.
add. Yes. Um, um, Indeed, we do not have a centralized system for wastewater collection and treatment. However, there is some improvement. There are some companies who are treating their wastewater and having that tested regularly. But we do understand that that's not information they always share or they are required to share or report. So that would be information. If you wanted information, you have to ask that directly to those companies, and that can be a challenge, of course, because that's always considered confidential. That's kind of a trend over here with everything being confidential. I know, Angeli, I'm sure you have encountered that during your
Yeah,
data
I'm not
collection.
getting it, but only from the gold, the two gold companies. They're sharing it probably because they have to write their annual report because of the international regulations. But the
Exactly.
companies from Suriname, we have to try, of course. But like I saw in the chat, Fernandez, Rudisa, maybe also CIC and SAB. We have to
Yeah.
try and ask, what, because yeah, if you just, I don't know if it's sensitive data that they don't want to share, or maybe they don't understand what we want. Maybe we need to explain to them why it's important, but I'm not getting any data from them. I have to try. We have to try again.
Yes.
I'm just getting an idea. I think most of the companies who are certified, like say OSHA or something else, if you're certified, that means you have to have all these systems in
You have
place,
to
like
report. Yeah.
environmental quality, protect. So all those things. Um, so maybe if we can have an overview of the certified companies, we can identify who may have the data we need and then approach them to ask. I'm just thinking out loud. I'm not sure if Anjali, do you have an overview of certified companies in Suriname?
No, I don't
No.
have it, but we can work on it. I don't know who could
Mm,
help us with that.
mm,
If I'm sure, I think Stats Only now is also collecting waste oil, because I remember Mrs. Serlan. I think she was the consultant for the NC3.
yeah.
She had also asked them a few years ago to collect, and the last time that I asked them, they had it, because I think it was asked. I'm gonna share that data, but of course, again, we need to ask explanation of what it is. But Stats only has it, and I'm sure because they're certified and they have to report. So, but we have to check about Fernandez and Rudisa and SAB if they, yeah, if they have it. But we at least have for three companies. Forgot that Stats only has it.
Mm.
Groundwater extracted, and probably Stats only wastewater. I put it in the chat. But there's work to do regarding the Surinamese companies to try to get them on board. You can go ahead, Brittany. With your
Okay.
I have to leave
Thanks.
in the next 5 minutes, but I'll hear
Okay.
from you guys. Yeah.
Okay. No problem. Yeah, I was sorry. I was looking at the tables. It looks like at least for this company, you have their wastewater barrels of water per day. So this is great already. You already have data at least for one of the industries, right? One of the companies. Okay. Yeah, and I just put this table because this is what the main sources of data, and you can also use this table yourself when you're trying to uh, map the data that you need for the different waste categories. So for municipal solid waste disposed, usually it's in cubic meters, or whatever is the volume that is measured. Maybe it's by trucks, or maybe you have a weight scale at your landfill. It wasn't exactly clear on how this was collected in the last inventory, but I imagine there's a way that it's collected. I saw some data there that looked at truckloads, so that's one way as well. And then you have waste categorization of solid waste. So there is the IPCC waste categorization that you can use, which would say that for countries or countries that are in Latin America and the Caribbean, this is a general percentage of organic waste, garden waste, plastic, rubber, etc., that is within their landfill. So if you can imagine, that could be very different than what is actually in your own landfills. So here is an example of where I found a study. This PAHO study from 2003, this gave an idea of what your waste categorization looked like back in 2003. So it would be good to know if there's something similar, if that exists, or if there's some survey that's been done to get an understanding of the waste composition in the landfill. That would be very important data. Um, and then there's also here, uh, there was also some information in this study here, which is a little bit more recent. So this was a integrated waste management plan for Suriname by this ministry here, and this was a few years ago. Okay, thank you, Anjali. So these are just some places where perhaps you can find uh, the composition of the waste. I'm not sure what was used for the last inventory. I believe it was the defaults from the IPCC guidelines, but this is just a consideration for what could be used. Yeah, I can't click the screen and open it right now, but I can open it separately and put it in the chat for you to see. Another okay, and here open burning of waste. if you have an idea, I think I saw there was some statistic that was shared in the chat for how much waste is burned. So this was included in your last inventory. I'm not sure how this data was obtained, whether it was an approximation or a percentage of how much waste is collected, how much goes to the landfill versus how much is burned. I'm not sure, but this is why I have a question here. Perhaps this is a question that you can ask your colleagues who prepared the last inventory, or maybe if colleagues here know how we could find these numbers of how much waste is burned versus how much is put in the landfill. And then without any of that information, the main information that you can use, for example, is population data. If you don't have, this is to get your waste generation per capita, right? So this is absolutely in the absence of any waste collection data, you can still find your waste per capita if you have your population data, which you have. And same for domestic wastewater. So these are the points, the data points that you would need. Population, protein consumed per capita. Perhaps this could be, maybe this is done by like a food study or some type of health study for protein consumed per capita. If not, then you can use defaults, or you can use those that are in like UN statistics, for example, if you don't have an actual value that's recent for your country. And then also data from the sewage company. But I think you mentioned already that domestic wastewater is mainly unmanaged through septic tanks or through flowing through creeks, etc. creeks. So you can ignore that one. And so we went through some of the potential sources of industrial wastewater. This wasn't included in your last inventory, but there's always a good place to start is some of the same potential data sources from your IPP sector. So I know we mentioned the two main gold companies, but we can also take a look at some of the other industries that are included in your IPPU sector. And if I can remember, we had a few food and beverage companies. You had a distillery, the Bears Distillery, all of those companies produce wastewater as well. And in some cases, if you don't have the actual volume of wastewater that's produced, you can also use their production of that product, so production of beer or wine or alcohol, and then you can put that in. As the activity data that will then generate how much water is estimated to be used or produce wastewater as a result of that industry. So in the absence of their actual wastewater that they produce, you can use their production values as a proxy. So as you go along, you could just refer to this table. I'll share this presentation when I'm done, so you can take a look at these two studies here to see if they're relevant. So again, I'll put them in the chat. Okay, so I put the two. the two studies in the chat so that you can see if they're still relevant. So this was regarding waste categorization. Okay. So now let's look at some of the main data. We've already been talking about the data, but how it looks.
Brittany, I'm not, if I can interject, I'm not sure.
Sure.
I can't open the links. I'm not sure why. I can't even copy it.
Second, let me see if I can.
Maybe it's only me. Copy paste hat. Maybe Control C will help. Oh, okay. Control C works, but when I paste the link, I don't get a website or something. It's not recognized.
Sure. Give me 1 second. I will tell you if this works. Yeah, try copy and pasting those two instead.
Yes, this one works. Thank you.
And I sent the link for the other one. So these are just what I found online. By no means, one is from 2003, so very old. And then this integrated waste management plan was reported in 2022. So I think it's worth taking a look at to see who were the people involved, who did the report, if it's still relevant. Of course, you would you all there would be the better judge of that. But I just thought it was interesting that I could find some type of at least basic waste characterization um, and some explanation of your waste system in the country in these reports. Right. So basic data collection is solid waste generation quantity. So we've taken a look at that. The waste composition. This waste composition was better seen in that Tahoe study. And then solid waste treatment management and practices. And so we've spoken a little bit about that already. We know that you have solid waste in a landfill, you have some open burning of waste, you have septic and open sewers for domestic wastewater, and then you have quite a few industrial sources of wastewater as well, which you're currently trying to get data from. But when we're looking at municipal solid waste activity data, we're looking at the total municipal solid waste generated and the fractions that are disposed. So try to zoom in. Yeah, so these tables here is table 2.1 from the IPCC guidelines. These give defaults of the municipal solid waste generation and treatment, regional defaults. So as you can see here at the last part of this table says Americas, and you have Caribbean and you have Central America. So this is saying here that municipal solid waste generation is 0.49, 0.49 tons per capita per year. And this is saying here that the fraction of municipal solid waste that's sent to a disposal site is 83%. And this is the portion that's incinerated, 0.02%. So, 2%. 0% here is composted. And then there's another fraction that's here, 15%, that's unspecified. So if you have these values here, if you know here how much waste you're producing per year, per capita per year, you can put this value in here yourself. And if you know here the flow in which your waste is going, you can then change these percentages here. It doesn't have to be these defaults because this might be very different, right? You might having most of your most going to your solid waste disposal site, or maybe you have a bigger fraction that's being burned here. So just some points for you to know. This is coming, this is how it looks like. These are what the activity data would look like when you're plugging them in. Okay. And now when you're looking at municipal solid waste composition, this is what the activity data looks like. So waste composition is important because different types of waste have different degradable organic carbon. And what this means is degradable organic carbon, or the DOC, is one of the main parameters that affect the production of CH4 emissions from solid waste. So this DOC, this degradable organic carbon, is estimated based on the waste composition. And so this will vary for each country. So here in the IPCC guidelines, it says here for the Caribbean, this would be the defaults if you don't have your waste composition. It's saying here that food waste is 46.9% of your total waste, paper, cardboard, etc., 17%, wood, 2.4, textiles, 5.1, rubber, leather, plastics, etc., glass, going forward. So these are the main waste composition categories, we should say. And this is what the IPCC guideline defaults provide. However, if you have a breakdown of what your waste composition looks like, you can get a better idea and closer to what your waste emissions are producing in your landfills. I'm very sorry about this very small screen here, but this table here comes actually from UN Stats 2022 waste generation by source. So this is what it has for Suriname. See if I can zoom. Sorry about that. I think you'll have a better chance taking a look at this offline or looking directly at the UN Stats link. But it has here by year how much the generation of waste for agriculture waste in the terms of tons, manufacturing waste, construction waste, etc. So as you can see, it's not exactly the same type of waste categorization here. I think that PAHO study had a better waste composition, municipal solid waste composition. But if you know if this data is available or can be available, then it would be very good to get this data for your next inventory. Does anyone? Yes, German. I was just about to ask.
Yes, you mentioned the degradable carbon content something.
Mm-hmm.
What was the exact term or terminology?
Degradable organic carbon.
Degradable organic carbon. Okay. So that's you can calculate that based on your waste composition. So you have to identify which one is degradable or biodegradable. So from this list, I think the first three maybe or four would be biodegradable. So if you have that information, how do you calculate the content?
Okay.
So just the
You
volume or the weight or something.
okay, let me go into the next slide. I didn't So just as a reminder, these sessions here aren't focused fully on like on the methodology. So uh, also for degradable organic content, you have different factors that say how much degradable organic carbon is in within each of these types of waste. So
I see.
for food waste, it'll have the highest composition of degradable organic carbon, then paper, then wood, for example, and then you'll have smaller components in glass, metal, etc. But
Okay.
let
I
me
I had a
see.
other understanding. I didn't get you, I think. Okay. Because I haven't done this. I've never done this because we had help from Miss Soylen, the last infantry.
Mhm.
So this will be new as well. I'm not sure if we will be doing it or maybe someone will help us again, and maybe the
Okay.
next cycles we will do it on our own. But I'm just curious to know.
Yeah, sure. No, that's a very good question. I think uh, if once we have time at the end of the session, we can probably uh, pull open some of the equations. I would just need to make sure I find them and put them back in this presentation. But good question. I didn't realize that you uh, for the 2 hour sessions, there are various equations. So I was trying to see what we could fit into the session at a time. But we can always go back to them. Okay. So industrial solid waste. I think we've spoken at large about this already. So you already know what your industries are in your country. Uh, so apart from knowing what wastewater they're producing, if they have a specific type of industrial solid waste, this wasn't included in your last inventory. But you need to also know the fraction of industrial waste that goes to landfills. I saw that in the chat that Anjali sent. She sent for at least one industry what what industrial waste is produced in from some company, and what percentage or how much of that is going to a landfill. So that's good information already. You'll also need to know if there's any incineration and compost occurring. And you can also do this by using surveys on waste generation and composition at these industries, or they can do these surveys rather, would be ideal. And so then this is categorized as other waste. This wasn't included um, in your last greenhouse gas inventory, but other waste is defined by clinical waste, hazardous waste, agricultural waste. And so this includes things like plastic syringes, animal tissues, bandages, etc., things that are generally coming from a hospital. So this waste is usually incinerated, but sometimes may be disposed at the solid waste disposal site. Generally, it's a small contribution to emissions. There's also hazardous waste. So I think we spoke a little bit about like for example, the waste oils, if you have waste solvents, ash, things like this, which are hazardous in nature. Maybe there's some other type of hazardous waste that's coming from the other big industries. So generally, these are separated from other waste streams and also are small contribution to emissions. So you already know that you have waste oil, at least from some companies. This could be, you can account for emissions from that, although it would be very small. And then if you have this, I don't know if you do, but like for agricultural other waste in the waste sector, this would include um, the manure management and burning of agricultural residues, but these are reported under the agriculture sector. So unless you have other waste that's taken to a municipal solid site, municipal waste site, then it would be included in the waste sector. So Suriname doesn't include this, doesn't refer to clinical or hazardous waste in your last inventory, but perhaps this is something that could be explored. You already know that you have some hazardous waste, at least in waste oil, and you might have probably you have some clinical waste, but it would be good to get an idea of how this is treated. Yes, Chairman.
Yes, a question regarding the burning of agricultural residues. I'm immediately thinking of pesticides, used pesticide scans. So when I see the word residues, that's what I'm thinking of. Would you would you consider that under the waste or agriculture
Uh,
sector when you burn those scans maybe or collect them, or only if it's burned, then we report it under the AFOLU sector?
Yeah, so for pesticides, I don't, if you're burning those cans or canisters, that would definitely be considered, I think that would probably be considered hazardous waste. Or at minimum, if it's, I don't know if it's burned or if it's incinerated, then it could be like incineration. It's the thing is it's that's a challenging one to capture, to get that data. Is that a practice that those canisters are burned, or are they just disposed?
Yeah, so the how do you say it, the bedoeling? The goal is to collect all of them and get them recycled professionally. That's I
Mm-hmm.
know some time ago FFE was busy with something like that. I think together with CDC, they wanted to collect all those from the farmers, but when those are not collected, the farmers just burn them. Because, for
Okay.
example, for the rice fields, they use a lot of chemicals. Also, the small farms use a lot of chemicals, and those pesticides, those cans or containers are just burned most of the times, are just put together with solid waste or municipal waste.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, so no, that would fall under hazardous waste because they're chemicals, waste with chemicals that are either disposed or burned. Oops. You see my screen? Did my screen disappear?
No, we can still see it.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, that wouldn't be under agriculture. As the simple answer, the agriculture waste here, residues here that's referred to are those that are in soils. So, or for example, like if you have secondary burning, or if you have like sugar cane, and then you have a you you get the crop and then you leave the waste in the field. That's the agricultural residue, and then you burn that, for example. So no, it doesn't include the pesticides containers. That would be a hazardous waste.
Okay, I think I still have to make the this thing, what is the word?
Distinction, yeah.
Distinction, yeah. Because for example, the agriculture sector, you use so many different types of things. You use oil, you use machines, and you use pesticides, you use crops. So I still had to make that distinction between those things falling under other sectors and falling under the agriculture sector. It's a little tricky still, because when I think agriculture, I only think about things you really use under agriculture. So if you, for example, use a machine, I will automatically put it under the agriculture sector. But the oil or the fuel use will be on the energy sector, for example. So
Yeah.
that's something I need to get very good.
Yeah, it's a little tricky, but I think um as long as you can kind of map it in your head, um it gets a little bit easier as you're going along. Because you can have agriculture, like vehicles, agricultural vehicles, which would fall under the energy sector. But for example, the emissions that are coming from the agriculture would be coming from animals and from soil, right? And from manure management practices. But basically things that are happening in soil. And so those agricultural residues that are being referred to are those residues that are coming from crops, from things that are grown. But then also that's for residues. But then you also have things like fertilizers, which are also included in the agriculture sector, but it's because it's added to the soil, because that's where the emissions are occurring in the soil, with the nitrogen, with the roots of the plants, etc., that are creating the emissions. Then it's a separate emission for when the canister is burned, for example, then it's different. But I think we're getting there. You're getting there, and there'll be questions no matter how long you do this type of work. So don't worry too much. Okay, let's take a look into wastewater. This is for domestic wastewater. So here is where the first step is to estimate the total amount of organically degradable carbon in water. And so the data that you need here is population, so country population, and then also the country specific by biological oxygen demand per capita. So this is how much, this is in grams per person per day. Sometimes like the statistics department or the environment department has studies on this, or maybe the waste company has studies on this, but because this isn't uh, you don't have a centralized wastewater treatment, you can also use the IPCC default for this biological oxygen demand. So this is how much load you have on your water, basically how much oxygen it needs uh, to decompose. Okay. Now you also have a correction factor. So this correction factor is for other industrial biological oxygen demand, BOD, discharge into sewers. We don't have this situation here in your country. It might be the same way. It's if you don't have a centralized system, perhaps your industrial wastewater is also going either into a septic tank or in some cases into a pond, right? But this is just an example of how the data would look like. But the main data that you would need to worry about is your country population here. And this is for your domestic wastewater. And as you can see here, you have defaults here. This default here is for Asia and Asia, Middle East, etc., and Latin America. It says it's a value that's used for various regions. So, and then I think there might be one specific for the Caribbean, but if not, this would be the most relevant one to use. This is just going into the tier 2 calculation. It's not very different. It's just here if you may have a range, but if you don't have this BOD information nationally, then it doesn't, then it's not worth going into the tier 2 calculation today. Okay, so then once you have your total organic degradable material in your domestic wastewater, then we can look at how much emissions result from this. So in this case, this is how much CH4 emissions. And there are lots of different steps as you go along, but when you're using the IPCC software, it gives you a stepwise approach. The main ones that you'll need, of course, is your population data. And then these other factors here, for example, your organic component removed in sludge. If this information is not available in country, you use the default. Same as for the fraction of population and income group. So this would be a good one if you have, like, for example, if you have rural versus your population in your cities, in your big cities. There are different factors that are used for those who are in by income group. So if you have your population data that's split up by income group, so high income, medium, and low, then it assumes that you have different treatment systems for the different population. And it's just like a rural, urban, high income, and urban, low income, right? So this I. And then also the type of information you'll need is the treatment system or discharge pathway. So this is J. So this is an example of what it would look like. So here I mentioned here you have your BOD. This you get from IPCC defaults. It has here that in this case you're using urban high income. You're using the treatment system is a sewer. In this case, it might be open water, right? So open system or septic tanks. So those are actually different. And then you have, of course, how much your default factor, which is how many kilograms of methane are produced per year based on this type of system. So without going too much into all of the details, this is what some of what the data would look like behind the scenes, the data and the emission factors, just to give you a better idea. But some of the things that you would need to know would be the type of treatment system, the population, and the split of the population, such as urban high income, urban, what are they? rural, urban high income, and urban low income. Okay, so we just finished wastewater treatment and discharge. In summary, of course, it can go much more into details, and it can go. We looked at equations for CH4. There are also equations for N2O, nitrous oxide. But the data requirements are basically the same. What changes would be the emission factors, right? One moment, colleagues. Then I have here as the last slide for today's session is, in summary, what exactly should be reported in your biennial transparency report. And so this is just in summary of the discussion that we've had so far. The activity data, values for waste generation, so how much waste is generated, solid waste, and wastewater. Waste composition, this is regarding to waste composition in your landfills, very important. The carbon contents, this is generally you can use IPCC defaults for that if you don't have the carbon contents for each of the type of waste type. Degradable organic carbon, etc. These last two you can get from the IPCC defaults. So this is for all waste types. This is for municipal solid waste, industrial waste, clinical waste, sludge, hazardous waste. We discussed today the different potential sources for your industrial wastewater. We didn't go so much into the solid waste, but these would be some good questions to ask your industries. What percentage of their solid waste is going to the landfill, or how they're treating it, whether they're sending it to the landfill or they're burning it, etc. Or if they produce industrial solid waste in general, probably they do. And then some of the main data sources include national statistics, which your colleague has kindly put some of the Suriname's own national statistics into the chat. Surveys, so I included like the PAHO survey and the integrated solid waste management plan as some getting an idea of what the waste sector looks like, but also from existing studies and existing knowledge of the sector. Things might be different now than they were in 2022, and you should use the most recent information available. And especially for the waste sector, the use of IPCC defaults is key because generally the waste sector is not the highest emitting sector for developing countries. It is a high emitter, but generally it doesn't. Countries don't have all of the waste studies necessary to know how much degradable organic carbon is in each type of waste, etc. So it's important to make use of your IPCC defaults. Waste flows, we spoke a little bit about that. What percentage sent to landfills, composted, incinerated, and the same for your wastewater flows. And where data is not estimated, note it, so make a note of it, and describe possible efforts. And so this was done in your last inventory, which is very, very good, very commendable. And it's a good place to start again for your current one, for your BTR. And now, open to any other questions or comments. I see we have German. German, your hands up. Go ahead.
Yes, about the waste types. Mm, so let's say I'm not sure we will have this information. We only collect the government collects municipal solid waste. I don't think that companies yet the government does that, so it's not centralized for companies. I don't think so. And we also have maybe for the hospitals, or sometimes I hear we had some say we had, some say we don't have those. So the question, if we don't have this data disaggregated, is there an option to just have to calculate it and it is acceptable? Because I'm not sure we have these type of waste disaggregated. We only have everything in municipal solid waste and maybe also hospital waste, which is most of the time it's supposed to be incinerated, but I'm not sure if everything is being incinerated. I think Stephanie can help us with that. I see Lalita also have something to help us with. So that's the question. Yeah.
Yes, if I may. So indeed, we don't have any centralized data collection system when it comes to waste types. However, there are some estimates, and I think we can work with those, especially when it comes to the medical waste. I know that all companies accepting and incinerating medical waste do this by kg or by tons. So they should have an indication. I'm sure they do have an indication of how much they get on a daily or monthly basis in weight. Also, I think it's also noteworthy that this would regard, let's say, medical waste from the hospitals, etc. But indeed, German, a lot does end up at the landfill. Um, but I think there are some numbers we can work with. I know there was a project also when the government made some estimates on how much waste is dumped at the landfill based on the capacity of the trucks. So yes, very limited, but there is something we can work with.
Okay, so for the disaggregation of let's say if we have to make a rough estimate, would we be able to say this percentage is clinical waste or hazardous waste or industrial waste and municipal waste? Do you think we would be able to do that? Because that's, I think, what we need to fill in the tool to get the results.
Well, there are some guidelines, so I think some may apply, but it's something we can definitely look into.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I haven't done this yet, but I'm just thinking, let's say we don't have the data, what next? So
Yes.
that's why.
Yes,
Mhm.
indeed.
Okay.
Yeah. That's good. I think this feedback um has been good. There's there's always the most basic German tier one if there's an absence of these percentages. The IPCC guidelines provides what these percentage of waste composition could look like for Latin America and the Caribbean or Central America and the different regions. So as you might expect, it wouldn't be exactly what is happening, but at least it's a proxy that could be used until you have this disaggregation to improve, to improve the data and to improve the estimations of emissions in the waste sector. But definitely for Lalita, what you mentioned on the clinical waste, if you have the tons or the kg, the weight of it, that's sufficient for you to calculate how much if the emissions from incineration. Um, then of course the remaining you can then include uh, separately when it's going to the landfills, right? That could be that percentage would then be accounted for in the solid waste management section. Alex, do you have any other questions?
No, I don't think I
Mm.
have.
Not yet. I think as you go along, you might have some more questions, especially when you're going through the exercise. But I encourage you to go ahead and ask your data providers. Don't only rely on the two studies that I showed. As Lalita mentioned, there are some newer studies that were done by um, recently that could be used. So this is just what I was able to find online. But of course, that's the purpose of these types of sessions to open up open up our minds to what is available. Um, so I think there's some work to be done, maybe with asking the industries on their solid and wastewater, solid waste and wastewater. And I think with that, I think you all should be okay for your upcoming biennial transparency report. As usual, German, Shireen, Fiona, the team there, if you have any further follow-up questions along the way, please let me know. If I can't answer the questions, I will find someone who can. Yeah, but with that, I'd like to say thank you very much. And wishing you the best of the luck on your data collection for your first BTR and for your greenhouse gas inventory. It's been a pleasure being with you all for the past few weeks.
No, I think the pleasure is all ours because we definitely could use the help, and we will use the help, the information you shared. So we want to thank you as well for your time and for your patience with all the questions. But we have some time, I hope, to do it good. We want to do it as best as we can. Our deadline is now 2026.
Okay.
So we have some time left. We are still in the process of talking with the stakeholders to see with what data we still can get. And when we have everything, we will be processing that to see which one we can use, which one we can't it's not usable, and then try to fill it in the IPCC software. So we're not there yet, but if when we're busy with the software or with the processing of the data and we have question, we will be reaching out to you again because we don't have any other options. Or maybe also with the experts, but they are also, have their other things. But if you are available, I think we will ask Miss Patterson again to have some sessions or maybe one-on-one with us only, not with the stakeholders anymore, to see how we can wrap it up, because our deadline is long. It has long been passed since 2023, I think, or 2024, and now our deadline is 2026. So
That's
it will be
okay.
it will be time for the next BTR, and we still haven't submitted our first. So
That-
we hope we
That's
can.
okay. Yeah, you have the discretion to report as you need. And I mean, I think you're making the full use of CBIT-GSP. This is the reason we exist, is to support our developing countries, and especially those is in my region. So in the Caribbean. So yeah, please feel free to use us as your resource persons. Maybe it's me, maybe it's someone else. Depending on the expertise, I may ask some support from my other colleagues as well. But yeah, it's a pleasure as usual, and yeah,
Yes.
you can count on us.
Okay, great, great. We will be reaching out to you, we'll keep in touch. And I also want to thank all the stakeholders for joining and for providing us with information where you had something we didn't know. I'm not sure if you're available, but if we have some questions we think you can help us with, we will be reaching out to you as well. So I hope you will be available to help us out with the BTR or the data for the BTR. Okay, I guess I wanna thank everyone and greet everyone. Have a great day, rest of your day, and until we meet again or have a call again. I'm not sure which setting it will be.
Great. Thanks everyone.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Yes, have a good day. Bye bye.